Hello and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we are talking about how you can bypass gatekeepers and reach more high-value decision makers. And we're going to look at 5 different ways that we can do that. Now, Mike, this is our last show before we break up for summer, and it's just the two of us. It's very exciting. Are you happy?
It's been so long, really, and it's such a pleasure to be on your show, Kirsty. I have to say,
Yeah,
happy to
have you. Okay, so as per usual, guys, we're going to go through this today. We've got a couple of things to talk about. If you have any questions as we go through, please come and talk to us in the comments. It always makes our day. It means I don't have to speak to Mike as much, which I also love.
Can I ask a quick question? We don't want to do this all the time, but I'm just interested in what city you're in, and if you're abroad, put in the city and the country. I think most people in the UK, because of the time that we have it, but if you're just put the city in as a comment, that would be absolutely cool, so we can see where you're tuning in from. Thank you for that.
Okay, Mike. So before we get started, we put on the banner that we just closed down that we're going to talk about turning cold calls into warm calls. So can we just, before we get into the gatekeeper thing, can we just talk about cold calls versus warm calls?
Yeah, we can. Interestingly, on the post I made yesterday, which promoted the show, I had a few interactions with people on there, kind of really like cold calls, and I'm totally down with if you get off on cold calls, that's fine. It's just that the definition of a cold call is a call that somebody's not expecting and probably isn't welcoming of. That's the definition of a cold call, which means that you're going to have to like mega thick skin, and also I think as well, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, basically. Because timing is everything with cold calls, I think. And what I'm very keen on, I think, is a recognition that calls are okay. I'm totally down with calls, but what I want the call to be is a warm call. Okay,
Right.
so a cold call is when someone's not expecting it, and they don't know what it's about.
And they don't really want it. They're busy. They've got other things going on.
Oh well, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about it now. Actually, so you're a manager, you've got a big job, and loads of things going on in your life, and you're overworked because everyone is.
Yeah.
And then someone manages to find your number and rings you up, and it's like, what now? What? Right. So that's your first problem. No, your first problem is getting to them. Got to get through the gatekeeper. We'll talk about
Finding
that.
the number is a big problem.
Right. But you got to get the time. They've probably already got agencies that they talk to, or suppliers. I know there's some non-agencies on the show today. There's probably already people who are, who are supplying to them. So to think they don't need you, they may not have a vacancy or an opportunity to work with them, and they're short of time. That's not really a great start, to be honest, for someone who's not expected this call. They don't know what it's about at all. And you've got to be in like Flynn, like 100 miles an hour, because you've got to use AIDA. You've got to grab their attention, build interest, create desire, and then a call to action at the end. So you've got a very short space of time to do your AIDA in. It's madness to do that, if you ask me.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The alternative is a warm call, right? So a warm call is it's not a surprise, okay? Not necessarily expected. Oh, thank God you rang. I was waiting for this. Not necessarily. Although I'll tell you a story in a minute when people started ringing me actually cold, which was like not to sell me anything, but to buy off me, which was very cool. I'll tell you that story in a minute. But they're not a surprise by it, and they're kind of open because they know what it's about. In other words, you've warmed them up.
They're not actively against, I suppose, is a bare minimum, isn't it? They're not like, I don't like this guy.
No, they're not actively against, and I think it's important as well when you're doing this to recognize who's going to be doing these calls now, right? Because they're millennials, a lot of them now who are doing these calls, and Gen Zs. Kirsty Elizabeth, right? So how do we feel? Now, this is a trick question, isn't it, for you? So how do we feel about telephone calls, Kirsty?
So I actually prefer telephone. I'm the exception that proves the rule. Don't ask me that. I prefer telephone calls because I can get more from it.
How about your friendship group, though?
Okay, so I mean, my friends I've been friends with for over 20 years. I went to school with them. And I think in the last 12 months, I've probably spoken to them on the phone once. And yeah, I speak to them every day, but just via text.
So we've got a generation then of people who aren't keen on the phone. Really important. They're not keen on taking calls either, right? So making them or taking them, they're not so keen. This is what we're up against. This is the world that we're living in now. However, if you rely upon email to outreach or LinkedIn, not everybody uses LinkedIn. And obviously we have very, very sophisticated methods to get non-wanted emails pushed into clutter or junk.
And getting stronger every day as well.
Yeah. Now, okay, so these are the challenges. I'm going to show you how we're going to get around these in a minute, right? So another challenge is the gatekeeper. Now,
do you want to just give a definition of what you think a gatekeeper is, so everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet?
Yeah, it's like the meme I put on the post yesterday from Monty Python, the night none shall pass. Yeah, I just want to come over the bridge. None shall pass. It's like, well, I just want to come. No. I just want to speak to the manager. They're going to want to speak to me, really. And actually, someone made a joke in the post yesterday in the comments. They said, well, I'll just say it's the police calling or the ambulance or the school. It was a joke, I hasten to add.
Please make that a joke. That is a joke.
I have known people do that. Lie, really. It's like, what? It's not going to happen, is it? So I have a gatekeeper, right?
Okay.
She's fearsome. I love her. And she stops calls getting through to me. That's what she does. That's one of the many things that she does. And so I don't really get cold calls, although we get a lot of them. And she knows it all, you know. I think they think she's stupid.
Do you remember there was that?
Right, God, share this. Yeah.
So I was doing research about how to get past gatekeepers, and I came across, and it was American. It was an American video about how to get. It was on YouTube, I think. And the first thing that they opened was what do you have to remember about gatekeepers? They're not very bright, so you can trick them. And I was like, oh no! Oh my God, no! Stop watching immediately. The gatekeepers are normally very clever, very good at what they do, and very protective over the person that they are in charge of.
I'll tell you something else as a person who's protected by a gatekeeper. If you upset her, then you won't be speaking to me. I don't care who you are, client or anyone else for that matter. Not going to happen.
No.
Right? So this is stacking up against cold calling unless, and I know one or two people watching this show now are really good at cold calls. Awesome. You're the minority, the unicorns. Right?
Your team won't be a scalable business. Yeah.
Again? No.
Your team won't be
a scalable business based on that. You know, our saying is always the same. You've got to get exceptional results from average people because the majority of people out there are average. They have to be. We have a statistical bell curve that tells us they are. So if you expect a load of people in your business to be exceptional to make this work, not going to happen. You're going to fail, right? Yeah. So you have to come at it from a different way. You have to use processes. You have to use tools.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what you need to use. And that's what we're going to talk about in a minute or two.
Before we go into that, Mike, so just to give everyone seeing, this is what we class as a gatekeeper, someone who's there to protect the person that you want to reach. It could be a candidate, to be honest with you. If you're doing with kind of really high level candidates, they might have a gatekeeper that means you can't speak to them. Doesn't necessarily just have to be clients. And we have had a really good comment from Will, which is a question. How many people do you think actually work as a gatekeeper now, in your opinion? But he says people who sit on reception transferring calls, that's not necessarily what we would class.
Well, it kind of isn't. It isn't really. I mean, in some places you can't get through reception. I mean, if you know the direct dial number or you've got a mobile number, fine. You know, you're okay. Or even if you know the extension number, because you can ring in and ask for the extension, they'll think that you know they are, so they'll put you through. But increasingly in bigger firms, they don't have secretaries as such, which used to be the gatekeeper approach, right? Or personal assistants. They do it at entry level when you ring into switchboard. But again, the more senior people you target, the more likely they are to have a gatekeeper. Like a hiring manager, if you just ring in a hiring manager, very, very unlikely to have a gatekeeper. You've still got all the other problems that we talked about. You won't have the gatekeeper though. If you're trying to get through to the CIO or the CEO of a large business, the chances are they're not going to put you through at reception. They'll put you through to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I also think as well, a lot of people have hybrid roles. So I know a lot of people who work in a marketing function, but they do take on elements of gatekeeping. So
yeah.
They may not have their job may not solely be gatekeeping, but they definitely have elements of that in their role.
Oh, I've got a couple of examples of that really. My last permanent post, when I was in IT, we had one gatekeeper for the whole department, and all the calls were put through to her. Everyone went through to her. And when I used to do some work with a law firm in Birmingham, actually a national firm, but I was working in Birmingham then, they had one gatekeeper for the whole of the department I worked in, and everything went through to her. and she dealt with it then, and she decided whether it went. So I think it's a good question, and it's something you should take notice of. But it doesn't matter, even if they don't have a gatekeeper, you've still got all the other problems.
Okay.
So that's fair enough. Okay,
Mike. We mentioned that we have 5 sort of tools and tactics around getting around this. So can we look at the first one, please?
Now the first one is like mega obvious, and yet I know it's not done anywhere near enough, right? So I want you to imagine, because this is what you should do. You've written out your Hot 100, done a bit of research, or you've outsourced it to India and they've market mapped it for you, whatever. But you've got 100 companies, and you might have more than 100 names, because some of those companies might have more than one decision maker or hiring manager that you're going for. Okay, so that's cool. So we got them. The first thing to do is to see whether any of those are second connections to you on LinkedIn. I know it's obvious, right? And I'm sure everyone does it. Well, actually, I know not everyone does it, because I've had this conversation with loads of people. Oh, it's a good idea. Yeah, sure it is right now. But here's the thing. The chances of that are pretty slim. They're not, it's not like, well, I say that depends how big your network is, I suppose, doesn't it? But the chances of it are pretty slim. But what you're looking for is a second connection that you can ring up, and well enough, you know them well enough to ring up and say, "Here, I'm trying to get through to that Kirsty Ames. I see you connected. How well do you know her?" And they say, "Oh, not very much at all." Well, that's the end of that then. Or they say, "Yeah, actually, I know her really well. You know, she's my auntie or something." And you say, "Oh, all right then. Well, look, I really, really would value an email introduction. That's all. I don't expect you to recommend me. I'm not looking for that. You don't have to stick your neck out. All you need to say in an email is, look, I know where you are, Kirsty. I know where Mike is. I just think there'd be some value in you two talking to each other." That's it. It's a very low key, soft approach. And you've got to CC me in, though. That's the thing. If you don't CC me in, it doesn't work. You have to CC me in the email, right? And quite often I've actually written these emails and sent the email, and then they've cut and pasted and put in the emails. Right, okay. Right. So it's not exactly a big deal, but of course it bypasses, well, necessarily bypass the gatekeeper. We'll come to that in a second. But what it does, it reaches the decision maker or the person that you're trying to speak to in a way that they'll give you a little time, really. Okay, fair enough, probably going to be a waste of time, but what you got. So then what you do is you reply all to the email. So thanks very much for introducing me, whoever it was. Really appreciate that. Hi, Kirsty. Mike Ames here. I'll keep this brief, and then obviously you'll use your words. I'll put some words in for you, but you would use your words. But essentially, the message is pretty much the same. So, I'm Mike Ames. I am a recruiter, and I work with these companies, and I provide these staff. I'm not looking for a vacancy in capitals. Okay. What I like to do is work with people who have the same values and like to work in the same way as me. So all I'm looking for at the moment is to see whether our flavor of recruitment meets your tastes. That's it. If it doesn't, no problem. Yeah, we can go our separate ways. If it does, and you can't do anything with us now, no problems. I'm very patient and I'll wait. So I thought I'd just give you a call. If you don't want me to, please say so. Otherwise, we'll speak in the near future.
That's key there is it's not desperate, is it? It's really chill, laid back, no pressure.
Yeah. That's the point of it. Whereas most recruiters, particularly, they're going for the biz, I've got this great candidate, or I've, gives a vacancy job, and since everybody does that, it diminishes your chances of a reply or any kind of contact. It's just cheap, really. So I really wouldn't do it in this instance. What you're getting across is I'm not desperate because I don't want a vacancy. And if we don't work in the same way, I'm just not interested either, so, without being arrogant or pompous about it. So it's kind of a cool way to do the introduction. Okay. And then give them a call. At least then you can say, if you get to the gatekeeper, I sent them an email and asked if it was okay, and urged them to tell me if it wasn't. They haven't, so I presume that they want to speak to me. Would you mind just checking? I was introduced by person.
Yes, they mentioned the name of the introducee.
I was introduced to him by so and so. Right, recommended. So again, is it going to get you to where you want to be? Don't know, really. Is it better than a cold call? 100%, right.
It's going to warm you up by at least a couple of degrees, isn't it? You're going to go from sort of freezing to maybe 8 degrees or something. It's better than now, isn't it?
I think it is.
Okay. Yeah. So that's introduction. As we said, Mike, that seems to be a fairly common idea. So let's move on to the next one, which is a personal favorite of ours, obviously, which is podcasts, live streams, and webinars. Like
this, right? Leave that on for a second. Leave that on the screen just for a second, Kirst. Okay, so it's basically anything that's recorded. Well, this isn't recorded, but it's where you talk to each other, not written. How about that then? That's better.
Conversational.
Conversational, Kirsty. We should have rehearsed that before the show. Anyway,
No
yes.
need,
So, so as a guest, now I know recruiters. There's 3 that I can think of, right? And their main source of new clients is they run a podcast, and they invite people on and then do business with them at some point. Now, here's the thing with a guest, right? Don't know whether you want to share this, Kirsty, but if you don't have, do you want to expand about the kind of guests they've seen before? Because that's the thing with you, isn't it?
What do you mean?
Oh,
we should have rehearsed it, shouldn't we?
Now, we were talking about it earlier. You said, oh, don't forget to mention that. Right. If you're going to invite someone as a guest, they're going to look at other people who've been guests.
Oh, yeah, this, yeah.
Now, you need to get their hair colour changed, right? They're going to look to see if there are other people who've been on. You brought it up, for God's sake.
I know, I did, yeah. I know. Yeah, no, you have to, there's a level of prestige. So if you've had on your podcast only your mates from down the pub that have no value to the network, then if you're trying to get someone who's like a bigger name on there, they're normally quite protective over their podcast. They put a lot of time and effort into it. You know, or a lot of their reputation. They don't want to sort of dilute it by going on some show. If you've had some names on there who are well recognized in the industry, bigger names, sometimes bigger than them, then they're going to be flattered to be asked to be on the show, and you're going to start your relationship off on quite a strong point. So making sure that you slowly build up your caliber of people until you've got a really strong basis is a really good way of doing it.
Call a favour in, get the most high profile, most significant person you can to be the first guest.
We're always available.
Right. Anyway, la-di-da. But if you don't run a podcast, that's irrelevant. Live streams are the same pretty much as that. Webinars are a little different because you don't have to have a show or a regular appearance. You can just run a webinar and invite someone on. You don't have to do it all the time. You can do 3 or 4 a year. The other benefit is as an attendee. Now we get, I mean, there's 112 people who've nominated to come on this. There'll probably be about 25 to 30 live. I don't know how many it is.
We've got about 50. Oh, no, like combined between this and YouTube, we've had up to about 40, 50.
Right, okay. It is what it is, right? But then we get 10 times as many as that who watch it at the recording, right? Because we see the figures. So that's a lot of people who are basically looking at our stuff. And what that's doing is it's basically making you familiar with me and with Kirsty, our personalities, our style. You get to know that I know what I'm talking about. I'm very old. I've got a very short haircut, all of those things. And I can't sit still on screen. I'm very casual at the moment. I'll be turning around in a minute doing this.
Come on.
Yeah, okay. Get it back, Michael. But you get to know me as a person, is what I'm trying to say, right? And you get to know that I understand recruitment well, but I understand business growth better. Okay, that's the deal. So if I ring you, if I was to cold call you or ring you, the chances are you would take the call. I don't do it anymore because I don't need to. But if I did, and I might do this as an experiment one of the days, ring 20 people and see how many people take the call. Now, I'm not saying that's going to end in a sale or anything like that, but that's not the point of this show. The point of the show is to get a conversation, a warm conversation. What you do from there on in is down to you. But this idea of familiarity, and it's called the mere exposure effect. MERE exposure. You can Google it. It means the more you're exposed to something, the more familiar you become with it, the more likely you are to engage with it, whether it's a product or a person. So those people that come on this show regularly, if I so chose to reach out to you, there's a much greater chance that you would speak to me. Okay, so that's why having attendees on the show is quite important, because it increases that awareness of who I am and what I'm about, and the fact that I wouldn't, mess you about when I rang you up, right? So, and again, that's something that you can use to get around gatekeepers. It's Mike Ames here. Kirsty comes, watches my show on a regular basis. You may have seen her. I'm just ringing because I've got a couple of questions around the show, or I'm just ringing to get some feedback. Would you check with Kirsty to see whether she'd take the call? Say Mike Ames to the Mike Ames show. Again, a greater chance of getting around the.
Okay. All right, Mike, let's move on to the next one because I'm conscious of time, which is another favorite of ours, which is chunky content or events.
Oh, yes. Now, we have done several shows on chunky content. Chunky content is content that's good enough that somebody would almost pay for it. It's that good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it could be some in-depth research that you've done, or it could be maybe a salary survey. That's the most popular one. Maybe you've produced a little free micro course to help someone do something. Who knows what it is, but it's valuable. And the reason you know it's valuable, you've done the research up front to know that in the demographic you're targeting, this subject that you produce your content on is of interest, right? Else it's a guess otherwise, and I really wouldn't do it over a guess. So to be able to, I wouldn't say cold call necessarily, but to warm somebody up through a piece of content, send them a piece of content first and foremost. In the post is best, to be honest. We're going to talk about that a little later when we talk about AIDA campaigns. Hold that
With
thought.
this, would you also say something like maybe if you're connected on LinkedIn already, because a lot of people are connected with LinkedIn but have no relationship, if you said to them like, we've got this piece of research that we've done on why candidates accept a role in certain companies over another, would you like me to send it to you on a LinkedIn? Do you think that's a good way of getting it across?
Yeah, you can either do it that way. Obviously, there's a lot of content slinging around now. A lot of it's not much good. It's written by chat. They tell me chat's got less clever recently on purpose. Someone told me. I don't know. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of content around. So it really has to pass the so what test, right? The other thing you can do though is ask people to contribute to a piece of content. Do you remember that research we did?
I do, with lawyers, female lawyers.
Yes. Do you want to just recount that story, Kirsty? What
So it was when our focus was still the legal sector, and you were doing a piece of research on why there weren't as many female like C-level like leaders in law firms, because it's still kind of vastly
male, pale, and stale, basically.
Yeah, you said it, not me. So you were doing it. So you had a couple of connections that you already knew. So you rang them, and then you would say to somebody, say it was, Vera blogs, you would say, oh, is there anybody else that you think can offer me some good insight into this? And they would give you the names of other like C-level people.
Not just that, they introduced me.
Yeah. And these people would take the call from you and they would run with it.
Amazing, right? What I didn't do was sell on the call. I didn't do that, right? It was a genuine piece of research at that time. And I think now, actually, if anybody's in the legal sector, might be a decent piece of research to do, because it's still male, pale, and stale out there, right? And I genuinely wanted to know, why is this? And got some really good data. And then we pivoted over to the recruitment sector, and I never used it. But this idea of helping someone to talk about or voice an opinion about something they're interested in and feel passionate about, that you're then going to do something with, produce a piece of content, actually can work really well.
And you get kind of 3 or 4 different contact points, because you get the actual gathering of the research, then you get to show them what the final piece of research looks like, and then you get to say, like, have you had any feedback from it? There's lots of different ways that you can.
Oh, you can, yeah. There is. Basically, it's done what it's supposed to do, is start a conversation. That's what it hasn't sold for you. We're not talking about how to sell. It doesn't say that in the title. It says how to reach more decision makers, and that's the deal. And that will do that. Honestly, It was miraculous. We should do that again, Kirsty, actually.
We should do it again.
Amazing.
Okay, Mike, let's move on to events now.
Let's finish off events as well, because I just
let's move on to events. What you mean by that?
Inviting people to events, right? So event could be for higher level people in person at a very nice restaurant or event or venue, and getting a decent speaker. Really small events are very good, sort of 12 people, and everybody there is on the same pier. Do you remember what Barry Hoffman said?
Yeah. So Barry said, if you're doing, a talk down at the old Dog and Bone, the local pub, then he's probably not going to turn up because he doesn't want to.
No, he's not going to turn up.
Yeah, he's not going to turn up. If you're doing it at, the Pickle, what's the Pickle one in London? One looks like a giant pickle. The Gherkin, very close to Pickle. If you do something at the Gherkin, they're all kind of C-level HR people like him, HRDs for big companies. You get a great speaker, he's going to turn up for a free lunch. He's going to be there.
Yeah, that was his thing, right? So, and he used to be HR director of Computer Centre and then Land Securities in London. So big companies, and that's how you get to him. It's a very, very prestigious event, and people will come. Now, lower down, an invitation to a webinar or an online thing, or even a breakfast meeting, if the subject is good enough, not the dog and duck, a decent location, and if you've got a good speaker, people will come. And it's a great way to have a conversation. The deal is, we've got an event. It's a very prestigious event. This is where it's at. This is where the other. I'd like to invite Kirsty to this, but it's an invitation-only event, and we've only got limited spaces, and I want Kirsty to come. Would you check with her to see whether or not she would be interested in talking to me about it? If the event is suitable and it hits the mark, you'll get your conversation. If it isn't, you won't.
I have a question on this just before we move on. If that event isn't run by you, but it's run by somebody else, you could still do the same thing. You could still say, there's this other event that someone else is running, but I've been given 2 tickets and I'm allowed to invite somebody and I'm going to take that ticket.
There's a guy called Michael Gerber. He wrote The E-Myth Revisited. He came to England, American, came to England, did a speaking gig, and somebody who was trying to sell us accounting services, actually, I think it was, had got 5 tickets he'd bought, and they weren't cheap. And he said, I want you to come along with us. And he hired a little minibus, and we all went up. It was at the Armoury in Leeds, I remember. And it was great. I mean, it was a great way to engage and bring people forward. But it's all about quality and appropriateness. Yeah. Is that such a word? No.
There is now. Okay, Mike, let's move on to the things that I know you really love, which the first one is a campaign that we've spoken about before, which is a LinkedIn drip campaign.
Yes, it is. And then after this, we've got a little word from our sponsor.
We do indeed. Yes, we do.
Okay, right. So LinkedIn drip campaign. So a LinkedIn drip campaign is on LinkedIn, and it's where you drip interactions. So let's move on to the next thing now. No.
Done.
Right. It only works for people who are active on LinkedIn. Okay. That's the first thing. Secondly, you have to know your market quite well to know what would work and what wouldn't work. But essentially what you do, let's assume you're not connected with someone. Let's assume that to start off with, right? So to start off with, you comment on their posts. That's the thing. Comment and like.
In a creepy way. Not in a creepy way, though.
No, not in a creepy way, and not all the time, not stalkery. Like I had someone, he was a person, I think in the end I found out he was an Indian person selling offshore services, and I think he just wanted to get to me to get to my clients. Anyway, la-di-da. But I literally had a wall when I went on LinkedIn. It liked on pretty much every single post I'd done. It's like, how weird is that? No, I don't think so. So no. So, and also it's an authentic comment. Like I read your piece, like you did read it, right? If it was a blog post or something, I read it. This is why it affected me, or I don't know whether I agree with all of that, or whatever it is,
or something, yeah,
a question or whatever. It's got to be authentic, okay, but not too weird, not all the time. I'd say once every 4 to 6 weeks, you know, that kind of frequency. Then again, I had a conversation with someone. One of my clients actually uses this campaign, and he said it didn't matter so long as the comment was authentic. It didn't seem to matter, you know, as long as what he said. Well, yeah, I see why you would say that. It's fine. Anyway, whatever. As soon as they respond, then you can invite them to connect on LinkedIn, and you can refer in your invitation message to that post and use the word because.
Always.
I thought it'd be useful connect because we obviously see the same, we have got the same views around this subject here, or whatever it is. Hope you agree. And then in the PS, put a PS underneath, put something that shows that you've looked at their LinkedIn page or their website. Doesn't matter what it is.
Congrats on the award, or I see we were both interested in the Wolverhampton Wanderer Football Club.
Well, there's only me really, so that won't be using that one. But yeah, anything really. I did one yesterday for someone. She'd actually put a personal interest in gardening, and I said I like it except for the gardening, which I do. I like sitting in the garden and pouncing around and looking at the garden. I just don't like doing the digging, really. Right? It doesn't matter what you do, so long as you prove that you've looked and read their profile. You're not a machine, basically, right? Or a bot. If you do that, the chances are they'll connect. When they connect, then you send a message about 48 hours after they connect, which is a very low key. Oh, thanks very much for connecting. I'm sure you'll produce some more content, and so do I. See you out there. No pitch, nothing. Now, you can experiment with doing that on audio, an audio message. You get a minute, which is a long time, actually. So a nice short message. And then you can continue every now and again to comment. And then you get to the stage where you make a post that you are utterly certain that they'd be interested in, and you message them that post and say, look at this, I think you'd like it.
I'd really value your opinion on it.
You're only looking for a response. It's they call self-selection, right? You're looking for self-selection. When you get that, it means then that you can hit them with a piece of chunky content or an invitation to an event, right? You've lifted your chances significantly because they know who you are. So when you ring into the gatekeeper, Mike Ames here to speak to Kirsty Ames. Well, Kirsty Ames, just a coincidence, we've got the same surname.
Weird.
I know. Mike Ames to speak to Kirsty Ames. We've been interacting a lot on LinkedIn. He knows who I am. I've got an event I'd like to invite him to. I've only got 2 tickets. I'd like to talk to him about it. I'm not going to send anything through because if he doesn't want to do it, I'm not doing it. Now, is it going to get you through every time? No, it's not. Do you stand a chance of doing it? Yes, it's better.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mike, as you mentioned, we do have a new part to the show, don't we?
Yes, a word from our sponsors. We haven't got a sponsor because I'm not really sure I'm into it, actually. I think I like
we
to
like the fact that we can say what we want whenever we want.
About whoever we want. So I'm not really into that, but we are our own sponsors. So the reason I'm doing this is that because I found out that someone I've been talking to for ages didn't actually know what I did. So we're just going to have about 3 sentences to tell you every single show, so you know. So we are a growth consultancy. We work with micro and practice-sized recruitment firms where the owner wants to make a change. They want to make more money, have more free time. They want to have better job satisfaction, and ultimately they want to become wealthy. And they're not necessarily that certain how to do it. That's what we do. There you go. That was easy, wasn't it?
We help them to go, right, enough of that. Let's move on. It's such a
I'll probably work on that sponsor statement, make it a bit better, a bit slicker. You know, I'll see them all. They're really slick, aren't they? Ours was rubbish. Anyway,
we'll have to cut into a video that we post in. Okay, right, Mike, let's come to the final one because I know that this is a favorite. We've had a whole show on this before, and that is an AIDA connection campaign. An AIDA connection campaign. For us, it's one of our most powerful tools that we use for ourselves, and I think for a lot of your clients.
Yes. So if you've not seen the show on AIDA, Kirsty's going to put the URL into the comments for you. It's worth a watch. And AIDA stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And it is by far the most powerful little tool that you can use in sales and marketing. And you use it already without knowing. So if you make a cold call, you've got to grab their attention. Then you've got to create a bit of interest. Then you can spend some time to build some desire. Then you can go for the call to action, whatever it is that you wanted from the call. If you're writing an email to someone that you don't know, the subject line grabs attention, and then the first sentence builds some interest, and then the rest of the email creates some desire at the end. You've got the call to actions, right? So use it everywhere. Pitches, presentations, blog posts, everything, right? So what an AIDA campaign is instead of trying to do the whole AIDA, if you're cultured as well, you'll probably call it an AIDA campaign. It's an opera. Anyway.
I'm evidently not cultured. That's what we learned from that interaction.
Yeah. Quickly, could anyone just put in the comments if they've heard of AIDA? Put a thumbs up because I don't want to think it's just me. AIDA. Anyway, so you run an AIDA campaign. I'm going to start calling it that. And instead of trying to do it all in one touch point, one cold call or one email or something, you split it up and you have different interactions to one to create attention, one to create interest, one to create and build desire, and then one is the call to action at the end. Now, we haven't got the time to go through it in vast amounts of detail. I'm going to go down to the next level though and explain how it works. And this was the one where the last one that we ran, actually, no, we've won one since then, but the last one that we ran of these was pre-COVID. It was 2019, wasn't it? Actually, I picked up my last client from it last Christmas. It's the gift that keeps on giving, right there. But people rang in. They were just very interested and actually rang in to see what it was all about. So that, I don't know what is that a hot call? Is that, I don't know. Is that?
I think that's a boiling hot lava call. Yeah, because my favorite thing about that is you didn't expect it, so you didn't know what to say.
I wasn't ready, right? because we hadn't properly defined. We were doing it. we did it before, right? We've done it before, but it's never been in this way, right? This was a very specific campaign to achieve a specific thing, and we hadn't thought through the end of it really.
So, building as we went, and then
That was hilarious. Anyway, la-di-da. So the last one of these that we ran, I'll explain what it was. We were running one of our masterclasses, which is on growth that we do every now and again. It's a full day, and we want to get people to it. And we had, I think we were nearly full. We'd got 12 people come on it, and I think we got about 8 or 9 or something, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to run the campaign because in the masterclass we talk about campaigns, right? We talk about them, and I said, well, I'll run the campaign, and then perhaps we'll get some people coming from the campaign here. Anyway, it actually was better than it normally is. We not only filled up that day, but we've got some more people for the next one we're doing in November lined up already, right? We didn't have the room for them. So basically what this campaign is dead simple. We sent out a card which grabs attention and begins to build interest, like a picture postcard.
Handwritten. We had and made sure it's legible, because
handwritten, legible with a stamp on it. Out it went. Now you're going to say, oh, people don't work from offices. Well, they do, just not all the time. And it's such an unusual thing. It's like, well, yeah, it's going to find their way to that person anyway. So, and then we sent a video message, a bespoke video message on LinkedIn, which you could easily send as well if you wanted through email, either one.
Yeah,
I was connected to all of these people. And then we rang them up. Pete rang them up. And it was amazing. I think he got through to almost everybody, I think.
Yeah.
I think the connection rate was very, very high. I mean, they all knew me, obviously, from the show. So, you know, and we got, I'm sure it was 5 people from it.
It was.
Yeah,
2 on the day that we just ran, and then 3 for the next one, I think.
So I'm sure, because it was 30, we sent it to 35 people. And some, we got one, not one returned. Someone didn't know, we'd sent it to their accountants. That's what it was. Yeah, sorry. And then we got basically 7 out of that. So that's around about 15%, I think, 5 from 15% or whatever. But imagine a campaign when you get a 15% return on it. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
So AIDA campaigns are very cool. You need a little time to design them. You need to, you can't just do it on email. When people talk about campaigns, they immediately translate in their head, oh, well, we're going to be talking about email campaigns. Well, email is becoming less and less productive. It still works. It's
becoming more protected. Email practically basically has its own gatekeeper that won't let things through. So there's more likely for things to get, and there's more likely to be damage done to your email account as well. So there's more dangers involved. Post, no danger. It's fine.
No. So yeah, so if you design a campaign which creates that interest and builds that desire in them, they're very likely to take the call. And because you're sending through the post, when you ring in to speak to the gatekeeper, oh, I'm the bloke that sent whatever it is. We've used all sorts of things, boxes of chocolates. We use really nice reusable coffee mugs one time with tea and coffee in it. We use video cards, a range of different things, right? And it's like, I'm the guy that sent the so-and-so and so-and-so. And I sent an email and he replied to it. So could you just check if he wants to speak to me? It's all you can do with it, really.
Mike, before we round up, do you remember the campaign we were talking about from 2019 was a chocolate campaign? And you rang through and spoke to the gatekeeper, and he wasn't there for some reason. And you said to her, did you get the chocolates? And she said, no.
She did. She said, no, he took him into his office. I said, really? I said, oh, all right then. I couldn't get I tried twice. Use the chocolates as a conversation point. So I sent her a box of chocolates as well. Not in a weird way, right? So as you know.
It was like, these are for you to enjoy. Keep them out of his office or something like that.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, don't let him see these or something. Next time I rang in, she said, oh, he's not here now, but he's free at 11:30 on Friday. I'm putting you in his diary. And I got to speak to him. Didn't manage to convert him as a bloody client though. What do you know? But that's not the point, is it really? But the point is that when you start to think in this way, you are no longer talking about cold calls. You are now talking about warm calls, which was the whole point of this talk. Now, before we get round to the bits that Kirsty likes to close on, like the next show and all that sort of stuff, Kirsty, can you just show from 1 through to 5 all the different things that we said, one after the other, and I want you to look at them, if you don't mind, and just put in the comments the one that you prefer, the one that you think, I'd like to use that one, I'd like to try that out if I've never used it before. So let's start with number 1.
Okay, so number 1 is get an introduction. That was go through.
No brainer. You do that anyway, but yeah, okay. Number 2 is to use a podcast as a guest or an attendee. Number 3 is chunky content and events. Okay, that's pretty cool. Number 4 is a LinkedIn drip campaign, and number 5 is, of course, the AIDA campaign.
Just to let you know, by the way, Helen knows what it is.
Helen's very cultured. Maxine is very cultured.
Knows what it is. Rhiannon knows what it is. It's just me that doesn't know. I'm uncultured is what we're learning from this. So yeah, if you let us know in the comments, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, which one do you think you're most likely to try or most excited about? We always like to know.
We do. Yeah, we do.
Like to know. Okay, Mike, we have unfortunately come towards the end of this, and this is our last show before we break up for summer as well. But before we do just a little summary at the end, Mike, shall we talk about the show that we've got when we come back?
Yes, it's on the 28th of September. I really like summer holidays. And yes, so we've got James Hickman is coming on the show, and he has built a very, very popular and successful online community. Now, you might think, I don't really care about that. I'm a recruiter. Well, I'm telling you now, you might be you're a recruiter, but your clients aren't. Your clients are what they are. And almost everybody is looking for community, and an online way of doing it is certainly one way. So if it was as easy as setting up a WhatsApp group, everyone would do it, and they don't. So James is going to come on the show and talk to us about not just how to build an online community, but also how to monetize it, which is very exciting for all of us.
Okay, fantastic.
We'll see you then.
So we have had some replies. Number 4 seems to be a favourite. Helen said number 4 and Nicholas said number 4. Although Helen did come and say that she is excited about 5 because she loves chocolate. So she
deserves chocolate too. She deserves, because the woman who deserves chocolate is her.
Okay. Yeah, it is indeed. Okay, Mike. So normally at this point I'd come up with a top tip, but it feels like a weird one to do because it's like you've got 5 top tips today. So what would you say is something that somebody wants to take away from today's show?
Okay. Well, you see, I mean, obviously we like all of them, really. I think that's important. My top tip, though, would be to go with the LinkedIn drip campaign, because I've just given you pretty much everything that you need to run it. You're just going to need a bit of compelling content, chunky content at the end to finish it off, really, or an event. And as Kirsty said, let me be very clear, you don't have to run events yourself. You just have to find an event that you can buy tickets for and then invite them, right? So it's no big deal. People are interested in all sorts of things. If you find something that's interesting, they will come. And even if they don't come, there's a very good chance I'll speak to you, so it will have achieved its objective. So I think if I were you, I would experiment with the old LinkedIn drip campaign and see how you get on with that.
Yeah, Rhiannon also agrees with that. She's trying to interact on LinkedIn more. And Nikki said number 1, which I'm happy about because I think there's some real quick wins in number 1. I feel
Nikki,
like.
Yeah, I was hoping someone would say number 1, because the thing is, honestly, I go and work on client site and we do these things. We run these campaigns for people, and I say, well, is anyone connected with them? Oh, I don't know. We don't know. And you look, and somebody somewhere is connected. They've got a shared connection.
Someone's brother-in-law's sister or something or other.
Yeah, it's like, oh, all right then. Yeah, okay. So you can even do it to the just your second, but someone else in your organization that's a second connected. So, and then they would have to have the introduction, not you, obviously. But it doesn't matter. You got a conversation. So I think yes, that's a good one to do, actually.
Okay. All right. So we have unfortunately come towards the end. I'm going to say this. So we aren't going to be back until the end of September. If in the meantime you do have anything that you think would be a great thing for us to do on the show, feel free to pop it in the comments below. Or alternatively, if you want it to be a bit more subtle, you can email me at kirsty@flair.co.uk.
And if you've got any specific guests that you'd like to get us on the show, we'll do our best to do that for you.
We create this show for you guys to add value, so we want to make sure it is on point as possible. And what I will do as well is I'll just pop the LinkedIn link in there. So if you do miss us over the summer, you can just pop over to LinkedIn and watch one of our archived episodes.
Is that LinkedIn or YouTube?
YouTube still, yeah. Nice catch there. That's a test.
Was it? Did I pass that test?
Yes, I failed it though. Okay, Mike. So as I said, we've come to the end of the show. So I want to thank everybody for getting involved today. It always makes our day nicer when we get comments from other people. So thank you very much for not leaving.
Great summer as well, guys.
Yes, and we will see you in September.